Well, hello, and today on CISO Tradecraft, we got something special for you. I've got a long-standing industry executive and professional, Ira Winkler, whom a lot of people may have heard of, but we've got something really special for you this time. He's got an event coming up called CruiseCon, and we've got a discount code that's going to allow you to participate in the first at-sea cybersecurity conference in the history of the industry, and it's going to take place next year. Go ahead and listen to the show, and you're going to find out about it. Ira, looking forward to speaking with you.
Me too. Talk to you soon.
Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of CISO Tradecraft, the podcast that provides you with the information, knowledge, and wisdom to be a more effective cybersecurity leader. My name is G. Mark Hardy. I'm your host for today, and I've got a longtime friend and a luminary in the cybersecurity field, Ira Winkler, with me to talk about a number of things that we're going to find fascinating and compelling. So if you're following us on LinkedIn, please continue to do so. If not, please do it, because we do more than just podcasts, a lot of good information. If you're following us on your favorite podcast channel and you like what we have, 5 stars would help, or a thumbs up. And the same thing with YouTube. We've also got a newsletter out there, and we're doing everything we can to help you in your cybersecurity career journey. So with all that as an introduction, Ira, welcome to the CISO Tradecraft podcast.
Thanks for having me. I think I've been here once before, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So it's been way too long.
Well, we go back a long time, back to at least, I think probably the 1990s, I suppose, when we started across. But I remember when we sat on the same Hacker Jeopardy team at DEF CON 5. And for those who aren't good at math, that would have been 1997.
Yeah, that was actually, I think that was that the first Black Hat year, I think, too, or something?
I think it was.
So, yeah, and that was a interesting, fun time at the moment.
Yeah, it's now, of course, for 500 points, who was a third member of our team?
God, I can't remember him. Although I remember Bad Kitty. Nobody remembers her anymore. But
we can't call her that any there. She's Miss Kitty. She's back. Yeah, so anyway, Dead Addict was our third team member. And in the old days of Hacker Jeopardy, as we reminisce with there, a young lady who is now a little bit past her young age, but she's still quite attractive because she stays active in Hacker Jeopardy all these years later and goes by Miss Kitty. But there were sensitive reasons why we could not associate those two identities because of her career choice working in the educational system, but we'll kind of leave it at that.
Okay, we'll go for that. You can edit that out if relevant.
No, we're going to leave it in. We're going to do it live. That's what I love about the show. We just let her run. But so we did that. I remember we met at a conference in Galveston, Texas. We were both speaking there. And again, that was 1997.
Yeah.
And that was kind of in the heyday when there's just a handful of luminary speakers like yourself. I know that the speaker from Microsoft and the speaker from IBM both no-showed. And I happened to have a couple leftover presentations. I said, can I do that? Remember the speaker gift? They gave you a clock. I went home with 3 clocks that time. So I ended up speaking in 3 different sessions.
I actually remember that event because I think that event, when you're thinking, because I had a drive to the middle of nowhere, it's like 40 miles southeast of Houston. And then I think you had people like Howard Schmidt there. You had Sandy Lambert was there, if I'm not mistaken. There were a lot of people who, like you said, luminaries at the time that, well, looking back, I guess they're luminaries. To me, it was just Howard and Sandy. But
yeah, and for us at the time, we're sort of the new kids on the block who'd only been doing this a few years. And now, of course, turn the clock forward almost 40 years, and they're 30 years anyway, and it's a whole different ballgame out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, for me, it's pretty much the same. Different people come and go. Mm-hmm. What drives me crazy is that, we have things that are new now that we had back in the 1990s. Mm-hmm. For example, I remember somebody calling it vishing, which was a voice phishing. I'm like, right. God damn it, it's social engineering. What moron is calling social engineering in its original form vishing because, it's voice phishing. It's like, no, that's what it was from the very start,
It's just a matter of getting a meme or something getting traction. And like anything else, you kind of wonder, like, where was the very first person who came up with something? It's like the first person to look at an oyster and say, food. It's like, I don't know about that one. But it's the same thing in our career. There's a bunch of things that happen in our terminology, but a lot of what we think is new has been around a long time. It just wasn't big enough to turn into an industry. Nobody was going ahead and going public with it. But you and I were probably doing a lot of the techniques that you see companies built around, just part of rolling up our sleeves and getting the work done.
Well, yeah, one of the things, I don't know if we'll talk about, but like the cybersecurity skills and everything, there was no such thing as cybersecurity at the time. You just happened to go ahead and you were doing computer stuff that just happened to have what we now think of as security-related functionality. And like, secure development, like, okay, that's just good coding. All these other things like, software. I remember doing black box software testing. Oh, now I'm looking, what do they call that now? Now it's called being a white hat hacker doing, software, like vulnerability assessment. I'm like, that's just what we did at the time.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we didn't call it cyber back then. In fact, 97 was the year I first registered a domain. It was infosec.net. And my thought back then was anybody who gets into this new career on information security, we're just going to issue a membership card. And we'll start numbering at number 1, number 2, and 3. And we'll see for $1 for life, we'll just go ahead and you can sign up and they get a serial number. And it'd have been interesting to see where we'd be now today.
Well, I guess now that year is sort of like the CISSP. My CISSP number is 3116, and I think there might be lower, but I think they generally started at 3,000, so it looked like they had somebody certified. Like, because if you start at 1, it looks like a lonely profession. Like, I'm CISSP 2.
Well, I remember Hal Tipton trying to convince me back around 96, 97, hey, you need to take this new cert. I said, why would I pay you money to put initials after my name? It's going to be big someday. Well, of course, he was right. But if you remember those first CISSP exams, they were 6 hours long, 250 questions. I did mine. I finally got around to doing it in 2000. And the reason I waited that long was mostly because, as they say, I didn't quite believe in the certification at the time. But I was speaking at InfoSec World in Orlando. There's that InfoSec term again. And I was speaking Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And my wife, Kim, said, find a way to stay till Friday. The weather's nice down here. And on Friday, they were doing the CISSP exam. So I called up on Wednesday, Ray Kaplan. And Ray was one of the graybeards, if you will. He was a bit older, quite a bit older than us at the time, which means technically quite a bit older than us. But I said, hey, Ray, have you done the CISSP? He was the only guy I knew that had one. He said, yeah. I said, what could you do? He said, I'll overnight you some notes. So the next day in the morning, I get a FedEx package about yay thick, and it's just photocopied notes. So that Thursday, I sat in the parking lot of the outlet malls in Orlando while my wife went shopping, and I'm leafing through all these things: physical data, network, transport, session, presentation, application. Okay, that's networks, this thing, that. And then the next day, I sit down for the 6-hour exam with 250 questions. And I got to tell you, when I walked out of that thing, there's no way I'm thinking I passed that thing. And there's just so many trick questions, and some of them were put all of the answers that are correct. Not just one right answer. There could be 7 answers and 2, 3, 5, and 8. You walk out of there shaking your head wondering how I did it. So anyway, my CISSP number is 20042. But I found out that my friend who took hers in January was 10024. So starting in January of 2000, they jumped it to 10,000, and in February went to 20,000, then 30,000. So you could almost tell by the month where you were. And now, I don't know, they look like a serial number on a dollar bill. But if you were 4-digit midget, so to speak, then that means you got yours in the 90s.
I got mine I was grandfathered in, where
there was thought about that.
And there was no test at the time, which you should have taken advantage of. It sounds like you had the opportunity, and you just filled out stacks of papers, it took me much longer than 8 hours, on how you have in the past somehow satisfied the requirements for the domain. In theory, I was supposed to be allowed to do that because I was then supposed to be like a question writer Although luckily, I guess at the time, I never had to go ahead and write any questions. So I'm kind of happy. And then I kept it because I was actually going to drop it around 1999 or so, because I was also ironically grandfathered into the CISM,
That was I.
CISM.
Yeah.
And what happened, because I filled out paperwork for that as well. And then I was like going through and I'm like, gee, do I really need to pay $100 a year for it? Because, for the CISM, you had to pay ISACA, which was more expensive than
$85.
squared. And I'm like, do I need either one of them? And what happened was I saw a job advertisement somewhere around 1999 that said CISSP required. And when I saw that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep it because they actually prove the value. It's kind of like a lawyer joining the bar association.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after you graduate from law school, do you actually want to go ahead and then take a test to say you're qualified? Hell no. But the only reason they do it is because in order to practice law in different states, they have to pass the test. And unfortunately for some tests, they basically at least serve as a bar, because I don't know about, well, we can talk about this now, but, for example, you had companies in like the 2000s, like, roughly 2000, 2001, like Gardent, that was handing out business cards that said junior security analyst to somebody who was still in high school. You needed some way, and that's true, and you needed some way to differentiate, like, what is somebody who might still be in high school compared to somebody who, frankly, is, devoted some time and effort into studying and being in the profession.
I mean, so like some kid like Vitalik Buterin, how could he possibly know anything about crypto?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and by the way, I think I don't know what the number was, but probably around employee number 7 at Gardent, because I was at Secure Computing Corporation when they bought out the professional services team to make that the core of the business. And at the time, I was talking to Bruce Schneier, because Bruce was taking Counterpane. And I remember meeting him back at DEF CON. 97 was kind of a seminal year. And he just came out with Cryptonomicon. That was Neil Stephenson's book, a 920 some odd page tome. Mm-hmm. And in the back of it was a little crypto puzzle that was actually for dealing cards that Bruce had written. And he's explained how the crypto worked. And I guess I'd have to figure out what the year, because I remember we were nearby the pool at the Alexis Park, and I was talking to his wife, and she had said, yeah, my husband's the biggest self-promoter I know. I said, well, that's good for him. That's really how it works. But then I was talking to Bruce. He said, hey, Bruce, I saw your algorithm. Right. It's really, really good. Yeah. And it says the 10th term in the book is wrong. And he stopped and he said, you're the only person who's ever noticed that. I said, yeah, my code is shorter than the Perl script. I actually tested it writing something in an archaic language called APL. Well, I don't know if that was it, but shortly thereafter, we talked out. I guess it would have been 99 then is when I got an offer from him to go join Counterpane, because that was the year I got my MBA. And I was going to say, hey, you want to go out there? And the only reason I ended up not taking that opportunity primarily was my wife couldn't find a house that she could afford in the San Jose area. It was quite expensive to live out there. Mm-hmm. And we didn't really want to go all the way out to garlic country out there and then drive in. So the interesting thing is that 3 or 4 or 5 people all turned down Bruce, including Becky Bass, and I turned it down. And we're thinking, like, do we print up T-shirts for the next step? Bruce. Not that it was a badge of honor, but it was just, for whatever reason, for each of us, just something didn't quite work. Mark Cadrich was the guy who ended up getting the job, and StarWiz, he went by his handle. And I remember catching up with him in 2000. Well, we all know what happened to the tech community in 2000.
Right.
Well, here I am working with Gardent, who's a managed security service provider focusing on Fortune 500 companies. And Bruce's company, Counterpane, is a managed security service provider focusing on .com startups. So poor Mark, he looked kind of depressed. He said, what's wrong? He said, I've just got one person left to lay off in the practice. I said, who is it? He says, myself. Everybody else is gone. And so unfortunately, it disintegrated. But of course, Mark went on to do great stuff, and Bruce has continued to be a very prolific writer and thinker and blogger and everything else in this community, as have you. I think you're one of the people that you put out a lot more than the average person. You had a book out there on the street. I love the title. You Can't Stop Stupid. Yeah. And
I hate to be picky, but that is my 6th book, and there are 2 after that.
Okay. I had to pick one of them. Okay. So I did.
No, that's a good one. That is the one. If you ask me right now, which one should I read? That is the one I would recommend.
Okay. So You Can Stop Stupid. And so that's a recommendation for our listeners out there. But you've also got a couple Emmys, as I recall.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So what happened was after so I actually had a company around the .com time.
I know we talked about doing roll-ups and merging our businesses together.
Exactly. What happened though was Garden ended up buying you guys, and I would not go with them in any way, shape, or hell. And what happened was I ended up turning down an offer from Goldman Sachs because even they acknowledged they were kind of assholes at the time. And what happened was I ended up selling the company to HP. Right before the whole thing. And I ended up in the best condition of everybody because, like you're saying, Counterpane went to hell. Guardant was acquired by Network Solutions, if I'm not mistaken.
It was VeriSign.
VeriSign, that was like the people who owned the company for the most part came out well ahead. The average worker was
lucky. On the dollar. Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
But the average all my options that I had in Secure Computing Corporation, that's about what the exchange rate ended up being.
Yeah. So that, pretty much that was that. And I ended up doing well. But then after a while, what happened was I think, okay, what do I want to do? And I came up with this concept, which was essentially Crocodile Hunter made with kids. Because for those of you who remember Steve Irwin, Crocodile Hunter, what happened was I had a son who wanted to be a dolphin trainer. And I looked at what dolphin trainers make, and dolphin trainers make, crap. And I thought my son does not want to be a dolphin trainer to make like $30,000 a year because I knew him well. Then I thought, what dolphin trainers do make money? Because in every profession, there's always someone who makes more than the rest. And then I thought, well, you got people like Steve Irwin, Jeff Corwin, and people like that. Then I thought, Crocodile Hunter is made for kids. The only adults that watch it are people playing drinking games every time he almost got himself killed, which he ended up doing. But the reality was, I'm like, how come there's no Crocodile Hunter made with kids? And so I came up with a concept called Kid Guides, which is essentially you have two kids that go to different zoos, museums, aquariums, and other family destinations and visit the places and get behind the scenes. And that turned out to be distributed around the country, got 3 Emmys. I was moving it to PBS. And then the financial crisis in 2007, 2008 happened. And then I lost my sponsors where PBS requires you have sponsors to be on, even if I wanted to self-fund it. And I lost Panasonic, which is a shadow of what it once was, and US Airways, which quickly was no longer to be. So there went my aspirations of being a full-time TV executive producer, and went back to, I guess I was always doing cybersecurity, but then I had to go back, kind of put that on the back burner. I swear I'm going to bring this back. But anyway, I'm kind of bringing it back now with the whole CruiseCon thing, as a matter of fact.
And that's what I wanted to bring up, is you've always come up with these innovative ideas. And coming up in February of 2025, you got something called CruiseCon. And when I first heard about it, I was like, gee whiz, how come I didn't think of that? But you did. But more than just think about it, you actually did something with it. So tell me a little bit about CruiseCon.
So, I was chief security architect at Walmart. I was chief security strategist at HP throughout my career. And when you're at that level of like Fortune 100, especially Fortune 1 company, I wasn't the CISO of Walmart, but I was, reported directly to them. You get invited to some awesome events. And, diplomatically, some you can take, some you can't for ethical reasons. But these events are kind of awesome. And there's like this whole world. The average cybersecurity person doesn't realize it's there, with regard to events held in luxury places where people are like, doing, like we were doing the Amazing Race in the deserts of Israel, for like one VC event that I was invited to, as an example. And the thing is, it's like they do have some good content, but the content was secondary to the networking. Because again, you're at this place, it gets you a chance to network with some of the, in this case, top people in the profession and everything. And I'm like, these people, and me at the time, I don't need this for my career to advance. But I was like, the average cybersecurity professional, I mean, just how great would it be if they got the chance to network with like a Fortune 100 CISO and like other people at that level and get to experience, for example, like Admiral Rogers. Like Admiral Rogers is a great guy, but he doesn't do a generic event normally. He gets paid a lot of money to do events. So what I thought was, let's try to recreate one of these top tier events in a place that allows for networking or very conducive for networking, that also, again, gets people exposure and chances to, like these top events. It's not just technology subjects, it's professional development subjects, it's personal development subjects. And so I went ahead and I'm like, okay, let me figure this out. And then I'm like, what's a good place? And I got to admit, I love cruising. And I previously did an event on a cruise ship for like, if people remember P90X and the Beachbody Company, I went on one of their trips and everything, and that was awesome. And I thought, why don't I try to put together that event on a cruise ship using their facilities? And I went ahead logistically, figured it out, found my partner in this, Casey Yarborough, who's done a lot of executive events already. And so then I came up with, okay, now let me get the speakers. And Admiral Rogers was my first yes. Again, awesome guy. Then I went to like the top people I know. Like you have David Cross, who's CISO of Oracle. You have Jairo Orea, who's CISO of Royal Caribbean, going to be on there. Jarek Beeson, who's awesome. Whole bunch of all these other people who are going to be on this, who I said, hey, would you mind doing this? And all these people were like, okay. Admiral Rogers, his first thing was, Ira, you can stop now. You had me when you said ship and cruise.
Yeah. That's like Admiral. Naval officer here. Yeah, we resonate. Although Mike will be the senior officer afloat, I won't be because obviously he outranks me.
Yeah, but well, you never know. Maybe these days, whoever is most retired wins. I don't know what it's like anymore. But, then it's also like, so, we're going to have the days at sea, like 2 days at sea where we're holding the event, which includes Admiral Rogers as the keynote. We have some things like how to secure against APTs, AI-related one maybe. We have a topic on privacy, but we also have Jarek Beeson. For those of you that don't know him, Jarek he went from being a BISO to a CISO of Fortune 200 company, Waste Management. And this is a guy who did that primarily through his social presence. And he did it in an incredibly good, tasteful way. So he's not going to be talking about CISO stuff, I say with Dr. Evil quotes. He's going to be talking about how to develop an online presence. And then I also have other talks about personal development and things like that, how to go ahead and, do things, professional development. We're going to have a CISO Ask Me Anything with David Cross, Kirsten Davies, Jarek Beeson, Jairo, and then probably Tim Youngblood. I don't know if you know him, but former CISO of T-Mobile, Kimberly Clark, McDonald's, and a few other people. I think so far he's lined up to be the moderator. So we're having all that on how to really be better. But more important, again, is the networking that's going to happen during the shore excursions, during there's a private island day. So people are going to get to, pal around with each other and hopefully more get to network and things like that in a top tier environment, because it's going to be on Royal Caribbean Voyager of the Seas, which it's not the biggest of the cruise ships, but it's definitely high caliber, high quality. So anyway, sorry, that's my...
But that sounds fascinating. Now, how about for our CISO Tradecraft listeners? We got a special deal for them?
Oh, yeah. I think it's CISO Tradecraft 10 is a discount code. If you go to CruiseCon.com, I acquired the website, CruiseCon.com.
Okay.
To make it easy. And if you go, I think it's CISO Tradecraft 10, and I'm sure you'll put that up someplace or on the website.
That in our show notes.
Yeah, and then you'll be able to go ahead and get a 10% discount because, frankly, we're not making a profit off the people. Everybody thinks, oh, my God, it's going to be cheaper than it's easily cheaper than going to RSA, just the hotel rooms alone. ISC Squared, I think, was charging us the least cost was $1,400, which didn't include the cost of the hotel rooms and airfare and everything like that. CruiseCon, again, so far I think you can get on for $1,650, and with a 10% discount, it's there. Obviously, better cabins with balconies, if we still have them left, they're more expensive, but you can pretty much through CISO Tradecraft discount get on for $1,500 all in.
And that's a pretty amazing opportunity, and thank you. And by the way, we do have vendors who listen to the show, so as you had indicated, if you're not making the money or you're not covering the costs with the attendees, presumably if you've got sponsors there, so if anybody wants to sponsor CruiseCon, drop me a note at CISO Tradecraft, and I'll hook you up with Ira and his team.
Yeah, because again, we have, like you could go on the CruiseCon.com and see the caliber of people that are there as speakers. But frankly, what's impressing me more is the caliber of the attendees. Because I was putting this together thinking this is to democratize A-list events. And what's happening is, good or bad, a lot of the A-list people who even aren't speaking are showing up. And, so yes, we have you on top. Well, and even people almost as notable as you, I would say it that way. I don't want to give their names out because that's privacy related, as my wife would remind me of. But generally, this is how you get, again, I'm just really, really happy with the caliber of the content, the caliber of the event itself, but more impressed, frankly, with the caliber of the attendees specifically. So
yeah, and I want to urge people, if this is sounding interesting to you, don't fall victim to imposter syndrome, thinking, oh, I can't make the cut, or I'm not important enough, or whatever. This is for you. This is all designed to take people who are in the cybersecurity career profession and help move you to the next level. And there is something that everybody can contribute to your peers as well.
Well, and that's part of the big thing. The thing is, when you meet a lot of these people, like, for example, Larry Whiteside talks about this a lot. For those of you, Larry's a speaker there. But, Larry is one of those people, if you know him, is really, really humble guy with incredible accomplishments, who still sort of has imposter syndrome to this day when you talk to him.
Well, he just got married, so that's good for him.
Yeah, and that's awesome. But here's a guy who, frankly, top of the profession, top of everybody's A-list in many cases. And this guy, even himself, sometimes doubts himself. And I really wish, hopefully when you meet these people and see how human they are, even again, Admiral Rogers, I remember the first time I met him, I was introducing him and I was making fun of him on the stage. It's a long story. Maybe I'll tell that at CruiseCon. But these are people.
That's because he can't throw you in the brig. Yeah. Hardy, you're going back on active duty. I got a job for you.
Well, here's the irony, though. It's not him who would theoretically throw me into the brig. It would be the executive officer, because he'd be laughing at the whole thing, while the executive officer is he thinks it's funny, but I can't have that. But the reality is, it's just making when you meet these people and get to know them as people, they're people. Yeah. And being around them, you realize, wait a second, these people are really just like me in most cases. They have achieved a decent level of success. But when you find it out, it's you learn what differentiated them from other people. And frankly, most of the time, it's getting over imposter syndrome.
And as you had mentioned earlier, building your network. I remember Mark Victor Hansen, I had taken some programs with Mark. Mark was one of the editors of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And he had a little saying he used to say, he said, your network is your net worth. And the people that you hang around with, the people you can network with, are going to contribute to your ability to build a career, to build a success, and things such as that. And he was absolutely quite right, is that by expanding your set of contacts is how you get ahead.
Well, that kind of ties into the other philosophy, who are the 5 people you hang around? And when you say, who are the 5 people you're around most, I could tell you exactly how successful you are.
Yeah.
And that is another way of like reason why I do this. Like I attend a lot of events, and and the thing is, when you attend these events, it's like, okay, I try to hang out with everyone, but I still run into a lot of the same people again and again. Like I was at an event last week, and I was there with Jairo Araya. I was there with Clara, the deputy CISO. I was there with Bruce Phillips, who's CISO of like these other companies and everything. Even Jerry Geisler, the CISO of Walmart, was there. And it's like, I'm just hanging out with these people. And do I have the professional esteem that they do? No, these people are doing a, hard job. But when you get to know them as people, I'm not going into any, but, they have their own trials and tribulations as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow it's like, okay, how do they address them is one thing, and, I mean, if nothing else, I'm just hoping people will come away with the thing that these people who are achieving really, really good success in ways I would love to achieve are in general no different than me. You look at a person, for example, like, you assume that, I was joking with some people because somebody didn't know Jerry. I worked for Jerry at Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, who's Jerry? I go, look in that room and look for the guy you think is least likely to be the CISO of a Fortune 1 company. And probably he would be your 5th or 6th choice in that room. And it's not because he's a schmuck. It's because he's just like a regular guy. He's really humble, really nice and stuff like that. And you look at his background, you think, did he graduate with like a Harvard like MBA or something? No. He's a former Marine that just happened to work his way up through the chain and just worked hard and, developed some good technical skills, but, also seemed to have the, what would you call it? The personal skills, like how to be able to navigate a boardroom as as easily as navigate, like his background was in computer forensics and stuff and managing the Walmart lab, which is the best lab and probably ranked among the top labs in the world that he came out of. And, he's just a good, smart guy who's incredibly humble. And, he's the type of guy, like I said, you would never know unless you knew him that he was like a top executive at the world's largest company.
And so this is a chance then to spend some time one-on-one with these folks, because it's not going to be a lecture and then at the end you run up with a business card. Can I get a copy of your slides? All right, afterwards, hey, we're going to go have cocktails. We're going to go ahead and watch the sunset. We're going to go hit the beach, so to speak. And these people be generally available. And as they indicated, I'm pleased to be part of this, to come along as well. And looking forward to anybody who said, hey, I love CISO Tradecraft. And you get to see the face behind the voice. I got the face for radio. But more important, they go find out that, you build your contacts, you build your connections, and in building out your network, what you're going to find is that's going to pay big dividends going forward. You can learn in technology, and 18 months later, it's half its obsolete. But you could create relationships that last 20, 30 years like ours.
Yeah, and I mean, that's probably the hope. Like, if somebody comes away, like, we're going to have some really important, specific, I guess, technical skills, if you consider privacy technical, AI technical, like actual hands-on skills to a certain extent. But more important, just coming away with a comfort for the, I don't want to say the average person, but just walking away with, hey, these people are just like me. They're kind of my peers. On top of the fact, if you already are a CISO, the networking, because frankly, if something is going on, like one of the more valuable things that, for example, came out of some of the like A-list events I attend is like, you can call up somebody at another company, a similar company, and say, hey, here's what we're experiencing. What are you guys, did you learn anything? Like, was there a good, what's the best mitigation? I heard maybe if we making this up, but like if we, block outbound DNS, does that really work or something? And that's the type of thing you can use both tactically and, more important, it's a good strategy for a career and technology as a whole.
So Good idea. So let's have a little bit of fun. Let's talk about some stuff that's in the news today and things like that. So a couple of weeks ago, I did an episode. It was episode number 202 entitled Cybersecurity Crisis Are We Failing the Next Generation? And one of the things I took a look at there is the narrative that says we have hundreds of thousands, we have millions of jobs out there. You just open up a matchbook cover and said you could be a long-haul trucker. Nope. Oh, you want to be a cybersecurity professional? Sure. Yeah, go ahead and take this course, take this cert, get this degree. And companies will line up in front of your door like you're a number one draft pick. That's not how it works, though, is it?
Oh, hell no. About probably a few days after that, completely independent, I attended ISC Squared's Security Congress, and the acting CEO got up and gave the company line how there are 4.8 million job openings in cybersecurity. At least that's the way it came out. And, in order to satisfy that need, they're going to get a million new people into the profession, by getting a million people to get the CC certification, basic entry level, which is, more like, do you understand the vocabulary, if nothing else? I didn't take the test, not really sure. But, then I'm like, okay. And initially what impacted me was I was talking to like a bunch of people at the event before that, and a lot of them were unemployed, and they were like, I've been trying for like 6 months. A few of them, like one guy was like out of work for a year, and I was like, and then I'm hearing this, like, we're bringing 1 million people in, and these people are like, and you could look at like my posts, like there's one guy that's like, I just invested a whole bunch of money because cybersecurity is like supposedly has massive openings. And you have all these other people that are like, if there's 1 million openings, how come I can't even get an interview? And this is having a psychological impact on a lot of people. Like they can understand they're unemployed in a crappy job market, but a lot of people are being told they're unemployed in an immense job market that we've never seen before, where people are like doubling we're doubling the size of the profession. Like ISC Squared in their report is saying there's 5.5 million cybersecurity professionals and we need 4.8 million more. While when I looked at their numbers, there's in North America, Europe, and Latin America combined, there was a job loss from 2023 to 2024 of 60,000 people. According to their own numbers, while they're saying there's 4.8 million 4.8 million openings.
So what do you think the story is behind this? I mean, I've got my theories, but...
Well, the story is actually, ironically, in the report. And look at my, people should go to my LinkedIn profile, look at my open letter to ISC Squared. And what happens is, in the first place, somebody who says there's 3.5 million openings, I think they literally picked that number out of their ass and just publish it for republishing. But
I remember Don Parker. Remember Don's? 86.4% of statistics are made up.
Exactly. And, I thought that was, the Abraham Lincoln, 87% of statistics on the internet are made up. Mm-hmm. But, I looked at their ISC Squared study, and really what they're saying is the 4.8 million gap is what ISC Square assumes to secure the world properly. Mm-hmm. We need 10 million cybersecurity professionals roughly. And since we only have 5.5 million, we have a gap of 4.8 million. Then there's in little baby fonts that I have never seen that small, except maybe on like a drug packaging that has like all the studies.
Or footnotes when a company has a cybersecurity event and they put it into their 10K or their 8K.
Exactly. And it was tiny font. They said, well, this is what we kind of think we need to properly protect the world. These, however, are not actual job openings.
Yeah, I think what's also happening is this. A lot of us have struggled in our work centers to be able to get security to not be thought of as a cost center. And so the approach has been, it's like toilet paper. You get the cheapest stuff that you can so that there's no complaints. Because if you don't have it, people complain. But if it's a really thin 1,000 sheet stuff, well, at least it's okay. And so as a result, companies are underinvesting in their cybersecurity people and their personnel unless they have an incident or they're enlightened, which unfortunately is not the majority of companies. And as we look at things, and there's a lot of question like what's going to happen economically going forward and the like, and there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And I think companies are just saying, I don't really think I want to invest in this area. And the other thought that I had, which I put in my episode a couple of weeks ago, was this, is that the talent gap is not at the entry level. It's at the mid-career bracket. And these are people who have not only the technical skills, but the management skills, the ability to interact with senior leadership. And you don't walk in the door with a brand new cert or brand new degree with those skill sets. But that's where it's really needed, because that's how you get the attention and the time.
Well, this is actually something that's fascinating. I've actually been looking at, because when people start looking at it, like when I was in NSA, I was an intern, and I got cross-trained in different things. But in one job, like the way we used to do cybersecurity when you and I were starting, we weren't cybersecurity people. We were computer people. And like, okay, now I'm doing software testing. Mm-hmm. Now I'm doing administration of systems. Now I'm writing software for multi-level secure systems. And these were kind of sort of cyber jobs, but we never called them cyber jobs. It was just something. And then there became an over-specialization of cybersecurity roles, because I think really what we need to solve, if there is a professional crisis, is taking people from what we used to do, what I would call cybersecurity adjacent positions, and bring them in. Because who would you rather have? You're not going to get somebody, I just got my undergraduate degree from university. Should have mentioned their names. All of them are doing something.
Beep. There we go. You censored it out.
Yeah. So we're not going to have them from there, but would you rather have that, or say, hey, this guy was a Unix admin for 5 years, and now we need a security admin. I'm just going to pull that Unix admin in.
And I found
doing that.
I don't train people on the security stuff, but a lot of times you can't get the security people to get their head around the networking. So I like to find people who really get networking. They understand how things connect, how the communications work. And from that, if you have that as a baseline, we can add security on top of that, and you'll do great.
Well, exactly. But also on top of this, we have to realize, like, for example, what was it? Cisco laid off like thousands of security experts recently. I think Intel did the same. Mm-hmm. And I know this didn't make the news, but I know a Fortune 200 company that laid off a third of their staff. I know a private company that was roughly the size of a Fortune 60 company that laid off a third of their staff. And that's roughly, between the two companies, about 150 openings. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of others, less public layoffs, because when Cisco lays off like 3% of their, or 7%, whatever it was, of their employee base, that's notable. When another company lays it off, and what are they doing? A lot of these companies have making the decision to outsource. And like, so for example, I'm not saying that they're doing it well, but a lot of companies are like, that's a reason why a lot of MSSPs are doing reasonably well. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't say all of them, but, some of them were like overhiring, because even some MSSPs are laying people off. Like, I think it was, might have been something like Human or Sentinel One or somebody like that was laying off people. Like, don't quote me on that exactly.
I'm not certain either. So,
but there have been MSSPs laying people off. And we have to understand that a lot of it is a little bit better on the automation side. And I'm not going to say AI, because I hate the term AI because people use it too broadly. But if your job can be automated in such a way that decisions can be pared down, and a computer can make a decision based on an algorithm, maybe it's an AI-related algorithm or whatever, it doesn't have to be, then those type of jobs are vulnerable. Other jobs, people are just going to have, companies are just deciding to do more with less. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're seeing a lot, like thousands of layoffs.
And you know what? I think we can continue this conversation, but we're almost out of time here. So it kind of brings up the point that if you want to get an opportunity to sit down with Ira Winkler, or with me, or some of the other luminaries that you're bringing along on the CruiseCon, by all means, go over to cruisecon.com and take a look at it. On the register button, we do have a special registration code for CISO Tradecraft. It's CISO Tradecraft 1010. No spaces in there, and that will get you a discount on the room. Come on out, join us. This will be in February of 2025. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to, as you had said, get one-on-one with some of these people, find out that although they've achieved some amazing things in life and their career, at the end of the day, they're mostly just pretty much regular people, and they'd be very pleased to spend some time with you. I know I would, and I'm looking forward to it. So, Ira, any last thoughts before we wrap up for today?
Nah, I just wish people need to just really be excellent to each other now. We're in like an election that's tearing a lot of people apart, but more important, we have a lot of people who are out of work, and we really just need to be, I don't want to say be sensitive and pandering to them, but just be aware and offer people help, because frankly, the way most people are finding jobs is through networking. You open to people on CruiseCon. I'm going to like try to get badges that say I'm looking or I'm hiring. Oh, I don't want people to wait if they're unemployed to not spend money or to spend money on this if they can't afford it. But if they are there, we're going to make it, we're going to help them. And everybody should try to help everybody through networking or whatever as well.
I agree. Okay, well, thank you very much. For everybody who's listening here on CISO Tradecraft, thank you for being part of our show. This is your host, G. Mark Hardy. I'm glad to spend some time today with Ira Winkler. And as I indicated, there's a way to spend more time with us at CruiseCon. So until next time, thank you for listening and stay safe out there.